Hi, everyone. I tried to get them to drop me from the ceiling as an entrance, but it wasn't in the budget. I have a few thank yous to give out as well. First of all, to all my lovely friends in the very front that I made sit in the front. So they have dealt with me talking about the Layton School of Art for the last 4 years, since I became an intern at the Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design art collection. Adeline right here, my favorite lesbian in the world. As we talk about lesbians, I'm dedicating this to her, but she has also famously told me, Seth, not every building can be the Layton School of Art. And that is true, but there's 3 Layton Schools of Art. So I have a pretty good wide range within the city of Milwaukee. Second of all, I have to give a thank you to Docomomo and Eric. I'm so grateful to have worked with these authors and learn about the architecture field, learn about maybe like curation is easy to bring words to a banner, like what you walked in and saw, but to sit here and talk to you all, this is new, this is scary, so bear with me. But I'm the most grateful that I get to continue my scholarship of the Layton School of Art through Docomomo. I thought when that exhibition was over that I'd be kind of wrapping up the scholarship, and to show that we can look at the architectural history of Charlotte Partridge and Miriam Frink and dissect that even further into a whole event like this. I'm so grateful. So can we give a thank you for the board of directors and Eric Vogel and Docomomo? Thank you. And with that, we will get into the mothers of Milwaukee modernism, building the Layton School of Art. Let me see if I can. Okay, we'll see it. Bear with me.
I'll be here.
Yes, this is the mothers of Milwaukee modernism, building the Layton School of Art. Before there was a Layton School of Art, there was a Layton Art Gallery. In 1888, Frederick Layton, a meat packer, opened up Milwaukee's first art institution. During the course of his life, he made 99 trips from America to Europe, and he made acquisitions for his gallery that included academic Victorian era realism, and it was in contrast towards the latter part of the 19th century, avant-garde movements were taking over Germany. He was not interested in those Victorian era, in the avant-garde movements. He wanted Victorian era realism, and he really was focusing on the prospects or the attendees of his gallery to kind of have a restful Sunday, is how I like to think of it. He wasn't interested in educational programs going on at the Layton School of Art. One of the curators went up to him and said, can we start an educational program? And he replied back with, we are not a school. So it was not a school until Frederick Layton's death in 1919. Enter Charlotte Partridge and Miriam Frink. So Charlotte Partridge, on your right, was born in Minneapolis, Minnesota. She went to school in Illinois and then later became a second grade teacher in Oak Park, Illinois. After that, she enrolled at the Emma Church School of Art and learned applied arts. From there, she traveled to the Downer Women's College here in Milwaukee, which is now present day UWM, and she became the head of the art department there. Miriam Frink was born in Elkhart, Indiana, and she studied English at the Downer College for her freshman and sophomore year, went to Smith College, and then came back and became a faculty member of the Downer College. There, Charlotte Partridge and Miriam Frink met, and they began their lifelong effort, their lifelong partnership, both personally and professionally, which would last the next 50 years until 1975. So Frederick Layton died in 1919. In the same year, Emma Church, who Charlotte Partridge went to school with in Chicago, who was a women-owned school back in the early 20th century, and Emma Church closed the school and offered to give all of her materials from the school to Charlotte Partridge on the condition that she opened her own school. So Charlotte Partridge obliged and approached Layton Art Gallery and asked them if she could start an art school in their basement. This began the Layton School of Art. At the same time that Charlotte Partridge became the director of the Layton School of Art, a year later, she became the director of the Layton Art Gallery itself. One of the first things that she did while she was curator of the art gallery was bring it into the 20th century and effectively modernize the gallery years before modernism would even be coined a term. So she took the Pompeian red walls and painted them to an off-white and then began hanging artwork on the line. This is in contrast to salon-style hanging that was typical of the time. And it also took inspiration from things that were going on in Europe. Similarly to Frederick Layton, who was interested in European ideals being brought to Wisconsin, Charlotte Partridge brought modern European ideals to Wisconsin and modernized the gallery. So we see this centennial exhibition, and we see this Gustav Klimt Venice Biennale in the early 20th century exhibitions, and how that was reflective of what was going on in the Layton School at the time. And then on this far left, we see this exhibition from Frank Lloyd Wright that Charlotte Partridge curated in the 1930s, where Frank Lloyd Wright famously at this exhibition said that it would take Milwaukee 100 years to recover from how ugly the court building was that was just built in Milwaukee. And as they say, all press is good press. So whether people were mad at him for saying that, it became the most attended exhibition in Layton history. And this also shows that Charlotte Partridge was thinking about the modernist thinkers in providing platforms for innovation within the gallery platform itself. The gallery wasn't the only progressive thing about the school. The educational model was also very progressive. Oh, my slides are out of order, so that's cool. Well, I'll tell you about the Bauhaus School of Art as well. So the Layton School of Art was founded in 1920. 1 year earlier in Germany, the Bauhaus School of Art was opened. The Bauhaus School of Art was opened post-World War I and was interested in the following core tenets that I will now read to you. Cross-disciplinary collaboration, material experimentation, and the idea that form follows function. So a lot of new materials were kind of being released post-war, a lot of new techniques were being formed post-war, and it was reflected all in the Bauhaus. So the Layton School of Art and the Bauhaus kind of had this tangential parallel curve that they both were founded at the same time on similar ideation. To tell you specifically about the Layton School of Art, one of the most progressive things that was happening in the gallery was the concept of co-education. So coming from the Downer Women's College, men and women obviously were not interspersed in classes together. Layton School of Art, men and women were in classes together. And even more progressively, figure drawing was taking place co-educationally. So it was not deemed appropriate at the time for women to draw naked people, especially naked men, and it was extremely not appropriate for men and women to be cohabitating within a classroom. But Charlotte Partridge and Miriam Frink harbored that early culture of inclusivity. Liberal arts was also very important to all my MyEd friends. Did you guys have a fun liberal arts education at MyEd? They say. So at the time, art schools in America were really concerned with the copying of masterworks. They weren't as concerned with artists being free thinkers. It was more technique versus education itself. Thanks to Miriam Frink, who was an English teacher at the Downer College with Charlotte Partridge, she fostered an applied book arts class and a literature class, as well as an arts history class early on at the Layton School. And this kind of positions Layton students to be minded about their community, minded contextually, and like be the most prepared to take on Milwaukee, kind of inform the Milwaukee cultural fabric itself. Similar to the Bauhaus, industrialization had taken over both Europe and America. Charlotte Partridge was very interested in bringing artists into the industrial practice itself. So this was harboring designers, harboring artists, harboring people who could document industry itself. As we see here, we have an industrial design class, which was introduced in the first 10 years of the founding of the school, and there was also a very notable fashion and dress design course. Civic engagement was also very important to the school's foundation, as well as to Charlotte Partridge. We see in the MyEd archives that there is plenty of work that is reflective of what is going on in Milwaukee at the time. So when we talk about the Great Depression, the artwork in the collection gets sad and depressed. And then when there's booms economically, the 1950s art, very vibrant, very optimistic. We see here, this is an early 1910s French war orphans benefit for the French war orphans exhibition, thinking about how students can use design to inspire people to come to an event and give money. These photos on the far left, your right, my left, are students in Milwaukee as a whole. So you see Cathedral Square at the top, and that is where Cathedral Park is to this day, that building. And then the bottom, which I love, is Lakefront Collectivo and the harbor. So that was still there too, which I think is cool. But this work, there we go. Civic engagement and industry played a big role in inspiring and working through the Great Depression. So during the 1930s, Great Depression hits America. To kind of spur economic growth within America itself, the New Deal is passed. Part of that is the Works Progress Administration. It was to build new infrastructure within America itself. Part of this was the movement of federal funds to fund artists and put artists to work documenting American infrastructure. So now Charlotte Partridge is the head of the school, she's the head of the gallery, and then she gets offered to be head of the Works Progress Administration for the entire state of Wisconsin. With that, she puts hundreds of artists to work with federal funds, documenting American infrastructure. So it's murals at post office, it's documentation of farm industry, documentation of Americans at work. Through the Works Progress Administration, Charlotte Partridge is able to go throughout all of America and look at art institutes, art museums, art schools. She kind of is doing research and sampling the best parts of institutions to bring back to the Layton itself. This all comes to a head when she is offered the Overlander Trust grant, and this was a foundation that wanted to harbor the intercultural exchange between Germany and America. Charlotte Partridge notably says, "I have not been in Germany since I was a very young girl, and so I am looking forward to this opportunity with great interest. Things I am especially interested in are the German art collections and the museum installations, industrial art schools, fine art schools, and a study of the relationship between industries and schools." Industries and schools. Also, I want to see the sculptures, architecture, graphics, and paintings of modern Germany. So I think right there, early on, you see that the Layton School and Charlotte Partridge is interested in both industry and what's modern. While she's in Germany, she is likely introduced to buildings of this nature. So the Bauhaus had been disbanded because the Nazi regime moved into Germany and they deemed the Bauhaus degenerate art. Fun thing about building concrete buildings, it's really hard to get rid of them. So Charlotte Partridge was still introduced to the architecture of Germany at the time. Full of inspiration, she returned back to Milwaukee. There, she decided that she was going to build a house inspired by buildings that she saw in Germany. So she took some drawings that she did while she was in Germany and approached the architect Harry Bogner. Harry Bogner built her this house 15 miles away from the site of the Layton School of Art, and her and Miriam Frink lived there. We can see the similarities between this Marcel Brewer house on your right, and then Charlotte Partridge and Miriam Frink's on the left. This house just went for sale. So if anyone wants to buy it and give me a tour, I would really love that. Charlotte Partridge and Miriam Frink lived here for the rest of their lives. They also lived here through World War II. So World War II had come and gone, and the introduction of the GI Bill had nearly doubled the attendance of the Layton School of Art. Milwaukee, inspired by the heroicism of the veterans coming home from war, wanted to have something to commemorate these returning veterans and honor the dead. In comes the War Memorial Center, which is still standing here today. The War Memorial Center was meant to have 3 buildings itself. It was meant to be an art museum, a performing arts hall, a community arts center, and a monument to the veterans returning home. The slogan was, "Honor the living, Honor the dead by serving the living. Yes, you were right. Having this in front of me would be a little helpful. So Charlotte Partridge is brought on to the board of directors for the War Memorial Center, and she is kind of brought in as the leader for the art part of the War Memorial Center itself. And this documented a movement to the lakefront and civic centers coming to the lakefront on Milwaukee. Back to the GI Bill. So the GI Bill had passed, and attendance of the Layton School of Art nearly doubled in size. It became clear that the Layton School of Art was too big for its britches. In fact, it had already moved out from the basement into the gallery itself and into the surrounding buildings around Milwaukee. There was now 4 options for what the Layton could do. Summarized, it was either build a new building or reuse a previous structure. But here is 4 options that were deemed in a board meeting. It was move into the War Memorial Center, which would be great synergy because she's the head of art at the War Memorial Center. Use the gallery building if it's available. At this time, it was being discussed that the Layton Art Gallery collection and the Milwaukee Institute of Art collections would merge together to form the Milwaukee Art Museum, which has happened. But I think she was planning on, if we move this collection out of the Layton Gallery, we can adaptively reuse the Layton site for the school. Another thing, a patron of the Layton Art Gallery gave her mansion, or offered up her mansion to the Layton School so that they could tear it down and build a new building, or they could think about acquiring an old office building and remodeling. In helping her determine what she should do, Charlotte Partridge consulted with local architects. This was to analyze the possibility of adaptively reusing the Layton School specifically. So she consulted with Willis Leanhouse, Alexander Eschweiler, and Harry Bogner, and then she ended with Jack Waldheim. Jack Waldheim was a Layton faculty member, an industrial designer. He studied journalism at the University of Wisconsin-Madison and was involved with the student housing there. There he gained a passion for architecture. He was in Arizona and read this book called The New Vision by Laszlo Moholy-Nagy and was inspired enough to move to Chicago and enroll in school at the Illinois Technology Institute. There he met Bartolucci. He met Bartolucci in Chicago under Laszlo. Whoa. And they designed a borrow chair. They also worked for the Container Corporation of America. They worked for the American Army, and they later became faculty members of the Layton School of Art. Charlotte Partridge, knowing the connection between Laszlo Moholy-Nagy, who was part of the Bauhaus in Germany, who moved to Chicago and opened up the new Bauhaus, hired Jack Waldheim to analyze the possibility of adaptively reusing the Layton School of Art. It was deemed that it would take $400,000 to innovate and adaptively reuse the Layton Art Gallery and turn it into a school that was purpose-built enough for the national representation that was happening at the Layton School of Art. It was effectively impractical to use the Layton Art Gallery. So Charlotte Partridge decided to take up Mrs. Eleanor Lane on taking her mansion and demolishing it for the site of the Layton School of Art on Prospect Avenue. Yes.
First, that was dormitory for the girls.
This was the girls' dormitory. Oh, wow. That's amazing. Yeah. So this was the dormitory for the girls. This got torn down, right?
Yes.
For the Layton School, yes.
I could only be there 1 year, and then I had to find something else.
Wow. Oh, amazing. Yeah. Tear down the mansion. Yes. So the mansion is torn down, and it is on Prospect Avenue. Do you guys know where the Jewish Museum, Milwaukee, is now? I see some heads raising. Do you know that empty site of land next to it? That is where the Layton School of Art used to be. And I will tell you why it got destroyed later, coming soon. This is my favorite bit. So Charlotte Partridge, Miriam Frink, Jack Waldheim, Edgar Bartolucci, and associates worked on the design for the Layton School of Art. Now, Jack Waldheim was not a registered architect, so he is deemed as the architectural designer of the school, and they worked with Miles Begoya, the architect, as well as V.E. Boyton, the engineer, and Cecil Construction Company to build the building itself. The acquisition of the mansion along Prospect Avenue marked the movement of two large civic cultural institutions to the lakefront. So now we had the War Memorial Center taking place on the lake, and then up the street, we had the Layton School of Art. This marked a movement from Milwaukee being a river-based city to a lakefront city. I did not know this before doing this research, but I thought Milwaukee was always utilizing the lakefront. I'm from Michigan, so we always are like lakefront, lakefront, lakefront. In Milwaukee, it was a river-based city. And think about all the breweries that are happening on the city and the cultural institutions that were around there. So this kind of marked the beginning of the revitalization of the lakefront in Milwaukee. As Prospect Avenue, as you guys know, if you're driving on Lakefront Memorial Drive, there's this huge bluff that's kind of separating the lakefront from the rest of the city. Jack Waldheim knew this and utilized that in the planning and the site planning of the architecture itself. So he positioned the Layton School 200 feet off the street and planned to build an auditorium that would be cantilevered over the bluff. Yes, we see this. So, spoiler alert, the auditorium was never built. It cost about $425,000 to build the building that was there, and that did not include the auditorium that was proposed. However, those two, I have a pointer. These were put in the ground and are still there if you want to go see them. You can see them from Lincoln Memorial Drive, and there's a bunch of like rubbish and bricks and stuff there if you want like a souvenir after this or something. By the way, this model was built by the industrial design students at the Layton School of Art. So Jack Waldheim commissioned his students effectively to work on this, and so it was a building that was built by the students, for the students. It was a purpose-built facility that Eric likes to talk about as a camera or a factory, and I'll show you why in the next slides. But the school was built. As I mentioned, it cost $425,000 to build. I have some specs to read for you architects out there, because I thought you would like this. The size was 45,000 square feet. It was 4 stories and a basement. It's not helpful if I say it really unenthusiastically. So the setback, it was set back 200 feet from Prospect Avenue. The materials included 14,971 glass blocks, 35,560 bricks, concrete, you guys love this. 8,000 cubic yards of evacuation and 62 plumbing fixtures. I don't know why that one's really important, but I put it in there. It was 2,046 square feet of thermal plane. It included lounges, 19 studios, 4 life drawing studios with skylights the skylights were never put in, but they were proposed in the drawings. And the auditorium, again, that was never built, was supposed to sit 450 people. Imagine if we could be having this talk in the auditorium. That would be amazing.
And the model never survived?
The model never survived. Everything we have from the Layton School of Art is in UWM or at MIAD currently, and I'm still looking. So as we can see here, we see this building that has large swathing panes of glass block, and we see on the far, your right, the view from Lincoln Memorial Drive and how it's looking over the bluff. And then I love this photo of Charlotte Partridge smoking a cigarette after the groundbreaking. I think she looks so fierce. And she's only like 5 foot something. She's a really short lady, but 411. She's like Sabrina Carpenter. So I very briefly want to give you a breakdown of the rooms. Hard to write about a building that doesn't exist anymore, and the site plan drawings that we have are really bad condition. I welcome you to go look at the ones that I salvaged and deemed interesting. Some of them are schematic and really not fun, but going into the site breakdown of the space, the basement included industrial design studios as well as photo studios. It was halfway embedded into the bluff. The first plan was kind of a place for the public to interact with, so it included a library, a gallery, and the gallery still really pushed the boundaries for what was possible in galleries. So we saw Charlotte Partridge modernizing the gallery. She even furthered that with doing these kind of architectural gallery exhibitions, really exploring how art could be displayed. I have a dream of doing an exhibition like this one day. Eric, maybe you and I can work on it. And the architecture was still of interest to Charlotte Partridge and Miriam Frink. They curated this architectural steel exhibition documenting how steel was being used in Milwaukee architecture at the time, which I think it's fabulous. We can also work on that if you want. The second floor was kind of a student commons area. So it included a kitchen, a cafeteria, a faculty lounge, a student lounge. There was a little bookstore and a few classrooms on the second floor. The third floor included a dress design studio and a graphic studio. And the third floor is kind of the piece de la resistance of the space. It was where students would take life drawing classes and figure drawing classes. Am I getting a phone call? Not me. So that's the breakdown of the school itself. And the comparison to the Bauhaus is unparalleled, really. So as you can see, this on the, sorry, I keep getting mixed up. On your right is the Bauhaus in Dessau, Germany, that was built by Walter Gropius. And on the left is the Layton School of Art. So you can see that both are buildings made out of concrete and glass, and both are utilizing light and thinking about light as a vital source for making art itself. An instrument of light. So I've been told that this building is kind of ugly, which maybe I agree, I don't know. That's not for me to say. But I do think something that the building celebrated super well was how it was a purpose-built, a custom-designed art school. And I'm geeked over that. And the way that it utilized light is specifically amazing. So if we want to think of it as maybe some household objects, I think of it both as a lamp for the way that it illuminated the night sky. Ferry boaters would say that it was like the brightest building in all of Milwaukee, and it was a clean, square-cut jewel is what was published in a newspaper. And then Eric's, what do you say, metaphor for the gallery was it's a camera. So thinking about how glass can be used to transform light that enters a space. Sunlight was also really important. So we all know the sun sets, sun rises in the east, sets in the west. The Layton School was positioned to take that in mind. So with these bright morning light coming from the east and setting in the west, the Layton School would always be illuminated. The north and south walls were mostly concrete, as you can see there, and weren't as concerned with bringing light into the space. But there needed to be some structure to hold the glass walls itself. The materiality, the glass, as was mentioned many, many, many times, but it included a revolutionary use of glass block detail. As I mentioned, do you want me to read it again? 14,971 glass bricks that were intertwined in between clear glass. So as we can see from this photo of the artist's painting, the clear glass was about positioned right at the eye level for the students so that they could still have this interaction between indoor, outdoor, but the walls in between filtered the light inside. To further filter that light, solar shades were put on the outside of the school. So for a while, I thought that these were balconies, actually, and Eric and I had to piece together that, okay, these aren't balconies, these are solar shades, and they're located directly above the clear windows in the space. So it's effectively filtering out any direct light from getting into the school. And it is a form of functional ornamentation, which I think the Bauhaus would really love. Some details from inside the school, they were still thinking about light even in materiality that was inside the offices. So there's a use of Coralux documented in the archives, and Coralux was a post-World War II material that was clear, obviously, and it was documented in the office area on the first floor. The composition of rooms also took in mind the use of light within the space. So as I mentioned, the basement was halfway underground. So the west corner of the basement was submerged, and it was effectively the darkest part of the entire school. They knew this, and they effectively put in the dark room for the photography, and they put in the photo studios in the basement to make use of the darkest area of the school. I also, this is not light, but I liked that the industrial design department was in the basement, where there was not an elevator in this school, so bringing heavy like table saws and stuff was not smart to put on any other floor except for ground level. So positioning the industrial design studio so that they don't have to lift or crane a big table saw into the building, also smart. The fourth floor, also positioned light really amazingly. So we see this drawing on the side. It's kind of this butterfly roof that positions itself upwards, and you can see that in the drawing of figure drawings. I have a really great story, and I'm probably gonna tell it really bad because not super good. But I met with a faculty member from the Layton School recently, and he was showing me around his house, and he pointed at a figure drawing in his bathroom and said, I have a story to tell you about that model. And so later we sat down, and he was telling me about figure drawing on the fourth floor. He mentioned that where the model was positioned in the room would determine how you could draw them. So if they were towards the hallway, the filter light would come into them and kind of give this like luminous glow, perfect for figure drawing. Alternatively, if they stood against the window, they'd be backlit, and it would be perfect for silhouette drawing. So this model gets naked. She did her hallway drawing with the filter light, and then decided that they were gonna do silhouette drawings against the window. About 20 minutes into the silhouette drawing, someone comes running in and says, there's a pileup on Lincoln Memorial Drive. Thank you for laughing. Because she was effectively flashing everyone on the road. So I don't know if they did much silhouette drawing after that, to be honest. Maybe just with the men, I don't know, but I thought it was really cheeky. So as easy as it was to see out, people could also see into the gallery. Now we have a sad violin music playing, please. So Charlotte Partridge and Miriam Frink opened the school in 1950. In 1954, the board asked them to retire. In fact, they asked Charlotte Partridge and Miriam Frink to write a letter of resignation requesting that they retire. Charlotte Partridge and Miriam Frink did not want to retire. The only reason they were asked was because the board members, primarily men, determined that it was not appropriate for two queer women, two women associated with Germany or like socialist ideas during McCarthyism would not effectively run a school of national caliber. And so Charlotte Partridge and Miriam Frink were asked to retire. As a final act, Charlotte Partridge made this edit to the top writing, where it says, whereas Miss Charlotte Partridge, director, and Miss Miriam Frink, co-director, have submitted applications to be retired as of the end of the present school year. Charlotte Partridge X'd this out, saying, we are not requesting to retire. They are making us retire. So Charlotte Partridge and Miriam Frink retired. They remained on the board of the Layton School, which, great. I'm curious about what would happen if they stayed a little longer on the board. Their successor was Edmund D. Lewandowski, who did the murals on the War Memorial, funnily enough. And for a while, I have to apologize to this man who's not even living anymore, because I thought he was the bad guy of the story. But really, he was just getting a job. It's the board members who are the bad guys. Shortly after Charlotte Partridge and Miriam Frink were asked to retire from the Layton board, the highway system determined that the site that the Layton School of Art was on would be a perfect place to connect the highway to Lincoln Memorial Drive. So in 1963, the freeway plan threatened the school sites. In 1964, public opposition began. In 1965, the school was condemned. They took $1.5 million and moved to Port Washington Road. Do you guys know where Cops is? Over there. There's a Hilton by Cops, and it's next door. And this is where Adeline told me not every school can be the Layton School of Art, but that one is, and that one's still running, although it is not an impressive modernist building. Oh, and also, these are the pillars that are still in the ground from the auditorium. The cherry on top of all of this is that they condemned the school, they tore it down in 1970, and then they said, just kidding, we're not gonna put the highway through it anymore. And so to this day, it still remains an empty plot of land, and they destroyed one of the most important modernist art schools in the entire United States for nothing. Charlotte Partridge was not done, however. My Siri is talking to me. She became the director of the Zonta Women's Club. I think she was scared to be bored, to be honest. She did so much stuff. So she became the head of the Zonta Women's Club in Milwaukee, and she proposed that they would make middle to low income elderly housing for Milwaukeeans. This was a purpose-built facility, and you can actually see it from Brady Street here in Milwaukee. It is probably the tallest building, kind of like right behind Walgreens. I would give a tour of all her buildings if you want me to. Anyways, the building was built and commissioned by Lillian Leanhouse, who was a student of Charlotte Partridge and Miriam Frink at the Layton School of Art. So Lillian Leanhouse studied under Charlotte Partridge and Miriam Frink, and then went to the University of Michigan to study architecture. She came back to Milwaukee, and she was the first registered female architect in the entire state. She built a house in River West that still stands today, and her daughter lives there. And just kind of the beginning of Charlotte Partridge getting her flowers. I'm sure seeing a student and commissioning a student to build a house, especially the first woman architect in Wisconsin, was really rewarding. On top of that, Charlotte Partridge received other accolades towards the end of her life. So the AIA recognized her for her Layton School of Art, for the Zonta Manor, and for her contributions to the War Memorial Center. And she was also given a doctorate of fine arts at Lawrence University towards the end of her life. She died in 1975. Charlotte Partridge moved on and lived on for a few more years, and both of them are no more. They did not see the opening of the Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design, but I'm sure that they would be so proud of it. Other people, though, are taking up the torch to share her story. It's not just me, thank God. So Wisconsin Pride in 2023 published a 10-minute documentary series documenting Charlotte Partridge and Miriam Frink and other LGBTQ influential people in the city. My recent favorite that you guys should all take your phones out and look her up is Faith Levine published a book called As Ever Miriam. And if you have any question about was their relationship queer, was it love, were they lesbians, read this book, because it's all a collection of letters from Miriam Frink to Charlotte Partridge sharing basically their love story. And Faith Levine does a really good job of providing footnotes for everyone, kind of breaking down what is happening in their lives during this relationship taking place. And she is going to be publishing a new round of books, I'm told. There's 300 published, they're all sold out, and she's currently looking for a new publisher, so stay tuned. Back to me. Just kidding. But in 2023, I had the honor of my lifetime to curate this exhibition called Predecessor. I had my dear friend Natasha, who's here, work on the design with me. We sampled the typography from the Layton School of Art to create this falling Layton graphic and to create this graphic for the exhibition itself. Been super cool to see how an archive can inform the design of a school itself. And basically, we told the story of the Layton School of Art, not through the architecture, but through the art that was in the collection. And the work is still on site at MIAD in their hallways. So if you go to their basement level, you can see the entire show still is open, but it's a hallway, so. And maybe the best contribution and the best legacy that was left from Charlotte Partridge and Miriam Frink and the Layton School of Art is the Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design and my beautiful friends. So the Layton School of Art closed in 1974, and then the faculty from the Layton School of Art moved to the Third Ward and opened up the Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design. In 1981, it was deemed that the Layton School of Art would be, or the Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design would be the official successor to the Layton School of Art. So we see that Charlotte Partridge and the Layton's legacy, and Miriam Frink's legacy is not lost. It is built through the art school, the only private art institution still in Wisconsin, and their inclusivity that they harbored at the Layton School of Art is still existing today. I got word from their Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Center that over 70% of their student body identifies as LGBTQ, over 50% identifies as women. So it's been an honor of my lifetime to be able to help bridge that gap between queer people, women, and their founders of their school themselves. So I implore you to also get this word out to the people, because this pride of place really is important for the sake of Milwaukee history, the sake of queer history, the sake of art and culture in the city itself. And not to end it off, but Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design was awarded the Nonprofit Business of the Year Award by the Wisconsin LGBT Chamber of Commerce this year. There's a gay president, so the gay school. And most importantly, it's where I met all my friends when I moved here to Milwaukee, and it's an amazing pride of place, and I'm so glad that we got to meet each other and be this like queer little friend group that gets to, you guys get to hear me talk about the Layton School of Art, and Charlotte Partridge and Miriam Frink's legacy lives on. Thank you all. Thank you. I also have one more thing to say. If you have more information to give me about the Layton School of Art, history is not stagnant. So I want to know more. I want to collect your stories. I know there's a lot of relevant people. I need to collect your stories, write some Wikipedia pages. So feel free to reach out to me. I don't have a business card, but I'll be at Stella's later with a drink in my hand, and I can give you my phone number. So onward. How should we wrap up?
So we have time for a few questions. So I would invite, if you could say the question loudly, and then Seth, if you could please repeat the question in case the mics don't pick it up. So let's start at the back, Michael.
Is there anyone in the audience who might know the name of the dogs in the book? Mary Waldheim and her brother David Waldheim, who lived right behind the Partridge house, might have the answer.
I knew Jordy, but you'll know that name.
Which is Jordy, right or left? Right.
Mary just mentioned this, and I was like, Jordy, I was trying to remember Jordy. I remember Timmy.
Well, the Waldheims are here. Let's give them a round of applause for coming. And then we had another question here.
Do you know where each of these ladies are buried? Where are their graves?
This is my this is the thing I've been trying to figure out for years and years and years, because I would love nothing more. So I don't know where they're buried. However, I do know that there is a Charlotte Partridge Japanese garden in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So I imagine that she was brought back to Minnesota, and I'm gonna be there this weekend, so maybe I'll see if I can explore. Yes.
I wonder if you can talk a little bit more about that moment in 1970 around the decision to actually demolish the building, because it was a very solid concrete building, and it seems like it was quickly demolished, but I could be wrong about that.
It was not quickly demolished. There was quite a bit of public despite for demolishing the building itself. I don't know too much about it, to be honest, but I do know that in 1963, it was proposed to tear down the building, and it took 7 years to actually destroy it. So I imagine that it was caught up in the county or in the government for a long time before it was determined.
There's a good section in Layton's Legacy. There are a couple of copies of the book that are out on the table that address that issue. Malcolm White, who was the president of the board of the Layton School of Art at that time, really put an effective protest together. He was a well-known lawyer, Foley perhaps. In any case, Malcolm White, no. In any case, he was extremely effective. He would have saved the building, but he got sick and eventually died. And so he wasn't able to contribute the energy and passion that he started with. And a lot of people say that if he had lived, then the school might still be here today.
He's also the reason Charlotte Partridge and Miriam Frink got fired. So maybe save the building, yes.
After the building was torn down, but before the formation of MyEd, did the Layton School continue on in a different location?
Yeah,
Where was that?
that's the building that is basically across from Cops on Port
Okay.
Washington Road. And it's,
Kind of neo-Georgian with a cupola.
yeah,
You can't
it's
miss it.
not.
So arty.
You can see it from the highway too, going that way. Yes.
Seth, in your research, did you learn very much about the faculty? I'm particularly interested in if there was any cross-pollination from the Bauhaus training into the faculty.
Yeah, so all we know is that Jack Waldheim studied under Laszlo Moholy-Nagy, who opened the new Bauhaus, and that is kind of why Charlotte Partridge hired him in the first place. But beyond that, that is kind of the only connection we have. But interesting, as we're studying architecture in Milwaukee as a whole, it's interesting to see how Chicago architects and notable figures can kind of slide their way up to Milwaukee to do notable things here as well.
So can I just, we have Layton School of Art graduate right here who actually met Jack Waldheim in Chicago before.
Oh, no, I met him at Layton Art.
Oh, at Layton Art, and then went to
Yeah.
Chicago. Do you
I
mind just tell,
went to Chicago and he has a studio there.
tell
and he-
everybody?
Okay.
Can I give you the microphone?
I was, I'm a graduate of Layton Art, but I was going to school at Layton Art during the time all the soldiers were coming under the GI Bill, and that time they talked about how they were growing. Excuse me. So, anyway, as I said, they had purchased that mansion, and they made that, I don't know how many years they had it as a dormitory for women, which I went to, and I could only stay there 1 year because they were going to tear it down for the new building. So at Layton, we had classes in the basement at the Layton Art, and classes in another building that we had to go walk several blocks to, the 6th and 7th floor there. That's where most of our classes were. We went in class, and this man came in with long hair, a rope for a belt, and partially gold hair, and like that. And I thought, oh my gosh, what is this? And he started talking and like that. I thought, boy, he's off the wall. So, anyway, I was taking furniture design from him. He had a design course, and then I know when the machines, and they scared me to death, but he had to use them. And I reported into Frank that he was so rough on me. That was my story with that. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Yeah, I would say the ones I ended up on are quite accessible. And as you said, there's just such a wealth. And I guess my question is like, how did you approach the research for this? Because it's such an extensive.
Yeah. I would be remiss if I did not say that Eric Vogel literally wrote the book on Frederick Layton in the Layton Art Gallery. So I was introduced to the collection and I was archiving that, right? And at the same time, I was given Layton's Legacy, which was the book about Frederick Layton and the Layton Art Gallery through the years. I used that to write most of the curatorial text for the exhibition and selected work that reflects what was going on at the school at the time. With this, Eric and I were really looking at the Layton drawings and the photos that we had and using that to determine points that we're talking about in the school. So we talk about the Bauhaus influence, the movement to the lakefront, the use of light, and then like the queer legacy that Charlotte Partridge and Miriam Frink left.
There is a letter in the UWM archives handwritten by Miriam. Charlotte Partridge, not Miriam, Charlotte Partridge. It is on fire from her to the board. It's worth a read.
She was one of, I think, only 25 art educators to represent the entire 20th century in interviews with the Smithsonian Museum. So she was extremely important nationwide. And I would say that we have not yet begun to really touch on her influence in our civic culture. She was single-handedly responsible for introducing basically a European concept of combining new art with a war memorial. People were like, oh, no, war memorials need to be solemn, they need to be quiet. She said, absolutely not, they need to be democratic and vibrant and about the future. If we fought and lost all these lives, it was because we definitely wanted to maintain the basis of our democracy. She thought that art and culture were that basis. That's where freedom of expression, as Seth described, art education before that was copying. And so you went into the Layton Gallery, you set up your easel, you put your canvas down, and then you copied technique. Frederick Layton allowed that. Charles Partridge said, that's not art education. That's not art education. You have to learn about yourself. You have to self-reflect, you have to read philosophy, you have to read literature, and through self-reflection comes self-expression. And we can get into Freud and all of the things, philosophy that were changing in the early 20th century. Charles Partridge was right on top of that. So this idea of personal expression, basis of democracy, combining with a war memorial, that was her. And we actually have the speech that she wrote introducing that idea in 1940. It's very early, like 41, 42. We're barely into the war. She's already thinking about a memorial and how Milwaukee can celebrate the people that are going to fight for democracy. So she was really impressive. We have the idea of a cultural destination at the lakefront. We have her to thank for that.
Just one more note with that Eleanor Roosevelt spent a lot of time in Milwaukee and indeed spent time with Charlotte Partridge and her circle and really gave the seed of the WPA through Eleanor Roosevelt to Washington.
Operating the former executive director of Discovery, who himself
Write that down, write that down.
Yes.
Yeah, just a super brief story about Ms. Partridge in her last year. She ended up at the Neckline Care Center, excuse me, ended up at the Neckline Care Center, and the staff couldn't figure out what was happening to their artwork. It kept being taken down from the walls. She was putting them in beautifying the place. She was putting these ghastly things under her bed.
Kicking until they end.
Aw.
Thank you again. Thank you so much.
Oh.